One of the problems with recycled reviews is, well, apart from having to shoot outside, which is always a major pain, one minute it's cloudy, next minute it's sunny, next minute it's blowing, next minute it's raining. And as if to prove a point about filming outside, I'm inside editing this right now. And yeah, I discovered that the camera didn't want to focus on me. Don't worry, it only lasts for a second and hopefully I've edited it so that you've got to suffer blurry me for the least amount of time. One of the problems is getting to 15 bottles in order to put together a recycled review. However, I seem to have managed it this time. Yeah, plenty bottles. The problem is though, is that often these empty bottles, they're not quite empty. Some of them have some dregs left in them. Now the truth is, I'm never really going to get around to finishing all of these dregs off. I mean, it just ends up being far too much whiskey for any one person to consume, and I've got lots of whiskey friends coming around the house to share the whiskey, but everybody's always interested in the new stuff, the stuff that's up at the top, at the shoulder, and the stuff that's been tried and we're well versed with tends to get pushed further and further to the back. So it gets to the point that these bottles with the last wee dregs on them just need to be finished off. So I've got a solution for that. This is one of these kind of demijohns from IKEA. A little tap on the bottom for me to pour a dram and see how my infinity demijohn is getting on from time to time. So what I'll do is I'll take these bottles with just 1 or 2 drams left in the bottom, and I'll allow them to live on in an infinity demijohn. That's another bottle for the next recycled review. But you can see the problem. This isn't always working out because I'm just going to end up with more and more of these infinity demijohns. And I need to be drinking this too in order for it to work. So I'm going to need to upscale. And I've got a solution for that. This is a blood tub. This is an empty cask that was given to me by a very generous friend. So I've put some whiskey in it. I've thrown a couple of bottles in this to test it over time, and I've turned the barrel around as it sat and let the whiskey seep through, make sure the integrity of the cask is okay, and it is okay. And apart from a bit of a leaky bung here, it seems to be holding liquid very well. Most importantly though, it smells lovely and fresh. So this could be our solution. We just need some whiskey to start filling it up. And the very generous friend also helped out there too. You see, this very generous friend has a bothy. And in that bothy, over the years, about 14 years now, he's collected far more whiskey than he can ever drink. And he's started to share it out. And this crate, when he came across to me, was absolutely full. So these slots that are empty in here are bottles that we've been able to share amongst ourselves, or have been able to add them into the wee reference library of whiskey that I have in the V-pub. But the rest of it we can use to put some really good quality foundations down in this wee blood tub. For those of you that don't think this is a good idea, you have to remember the sheer amount of whiskey that I have in the V-pub now. And it's about time in my whiskey journey that I started experimenting with things like this. And I'm not going to fill this cask with rubbish. It has to be quite good whiskies that go in this. That Infinity Demijohn has never had any rubbish put in it, ever. Sometimes it's been quite good and enjoyable to sip, and other times not so great. You need to give it time to settle. It's going to be interesting to see what time in a wee cask like this does to that liquid too. Let's get started. When you don't have all the kit, you need to improvise. That's smelling pretty good. We're going to be adding some peaty whiskies into this now. There was some peaty whiskies in the Infinity Demijohn, but not so many. I think it's got scope to add a bit of peat in here. Let's see what else we've got to add. We've got some old Islay Mist here, an 8-year-old. Got some Kalila, Distiller's Edition Kalila, finished in Moscatel. Oh dear. Perhaps I need a funnel. Perhaps I just need to be a wee bit more careful. How about some Lagavulin 16? Some Scotch Malt Whisky Society. This is distillery code 127, which would make it Port Charlotte. I don't know whether to be excited or nervous, but of both. How about some old Arran 10-year-old? This is one of those anniversary ones that was celebrating James McTaggart being 10 years as a whisky maker. 54.2% this one. This is good stuff. Even more peat. Let's add in some Kalila 12-year-old. Even more peat. A little bit of Talisker's 10-year-old as well. An old label bottling too. Some of this whisky will have been sitting around this particular gentleman's bothy for quite a wee while. I hope we're putting it to good use. And an old take on a peaty, smoky Benromach 2, fennel level, 53 ppm. It's going to be a lot of smoke in this wee cask, I think. A wee bit of Speyside smoke to mix in with all that West Coast and Islay peat smoke. And this is where I feel really quite nervous, because I'm going to put two absolute cracking bottles in that he gave me too. This one is a beautifully fruity and bright Glentocher's 19-year-old from Single Malts of Scotland range. A beautiful bottle. I'm going to save a wee dram of this one. And also, to put a big hit of richness into it, I'm putting in a 1990 Glendronach PX cask, single cask as well. 50.8%. And I'll save a dram of this to toast the cask. Now, it's time to take care of that Infinity Demijohn. This might take some time. And there we go. Plenty of space now indoors to take care of all the dregs, and a decent amount of liquid to kick off this little Infinity cask. This is an experiment. I'm very keen to recommend everyone perhaps doesn't try this at home. I had obviously the whiskey on hand and the whiskey gifted to me in order to be able to do this. Maybe see how I get on, how this works out here, before we all run out and try and get our hands on some blood tubs to do this at home, right? It might be an absolute mess. It is a little bit amateur hour. Now hopefully I'll be able to keep this in a cool, dry place, and sometime soon get out and get a new replacement bung and some bung cloth to try and seal things up a wee bit. But that's doing quite well for now. Still just about movable too. Okay, with the sun beating down on my head and no sun cream on, let's get through the regular recycled review. So as always, I've got 15 or so bottles of whiskey in here, bottles of whiskey that I've been sipping at home. I've enjoyed them from the neck pour, throughout the body of the bottle and the dregs at the end. By that time I've built up a bit of a relationship with the bottle, and now at this point in time I kind of throw them away, give them a wee bit of summary and share it with all of you and decide whether I would replace any of these or not. Let's get started with some Flora and Fauna. Any of you that have known me for long enough will know that I have a wee bit of a fetish for Diageo's Flora and Fauna series. This is one of the available today ones, Glenlossie 10-year-old. You can normally pick it up at malts.com directly or at a multitude of other online retailers. It's often not too expensive, somewhere in the order of £50. Some Flora and Fauna are a wee bit more expensive for the older ones, such as the Benromach and the Glasgow, but they, never more than about £60–65. So in terms of value, they're pretty reasonable. But wait a wee while, because they often go on offer, especially at malts.com direct. Anyway, Glenlossie is one of Diageo's lighter styles of kind of workhorse factory type distilleries. This is presented at 43% and 10 years old, this one, and it is a light bottle of whiskey, but that doesn't mean it's without character. When we're sipping Glenlossie, we're sometimes looking for a kind of more grassier style, a more herbaceous style. But for me, this is a fruity style. This is very light and fruit forward. It's very easy to love and very easy to sip. Obviously, we would love it, as with all Flora and Fauna, that if it was naturally presented, there's no reason why it shouldn't be, honestly speaking. This is the type of whiskey that would really only engage geeks. And anyway, we've been asking for that forever. I just noticed on the back that I've paid £57.99 for this back in the day. Probably bought this about 5, 6, 7 years ago. It's been around for quite a while, I think. And it's still about that same price today. We're always nervous about Flora and Fauna. We never know if it's going to stay around forever, if it's just going to be quietly dropped. It's the type of thing that I feel like I should always keep a healthy stock of it around. But then again, you're like, if it goes, it goes. There's been enough of it over the years for us to pick it up. I think this is a decent wee bottle of whiskey, and probably I'm going to replace it just because I tend to like having the Flora and Fauna series around. I think they're pretty things. This one I'd give a 7.5 out of 10, and I'll probably be looking to pick this up on offer. And here's the next one. This time it's a 12-year-old. And this is just along the road a little bit from Glenlossie. This is Diageo's Bayside Linkwood malt factory. A wee bit different to Glenlossie. Linkwood is available from most independent bottlers most of the time. There's plenty of it out there in various forms and lots of finishes and things like that. But for me, Flora and Fauna is one of the best representations of it. It's quite quiet. We don't know what the vatting is that goes in to make this little 12-year-old up, but it's pretty calm, it's pretty light-handed, let's say. There's no crazy port finishes, there's no heavy sherry or anything. It's just a nicely balanced little bottle of malt whiskey. And I think that suits Linkwood down to the ground. I know that there's a lot of people out there like to play with it and they like to kind of jazz things up a bit and bring a bit of colour and flavour and layers into it. But often, Linkwood is best when it's just left the hell alone. This one's a decent one. I don't know if you can taste the extra 2 years over the Glenlossie. They're very, very similar. I would give this another 7.5 out of 10, say it's something similar, but when it hits you in the right moment, it's elevated to an 8 or even higher. It's another good, wee, solid bottle of attractive and pretty whiskey. I do wish it was natural, but yeah, 7.5 maybe an 8 on a good night out of 10. Let's upscale a little. This remains one of the best value bottles of whiskey out there. It's much more expensive now than it once was. This bottle I bought a year ago and I paid £98 for it. That was on special offer back at the time. Now you're talking about 150, 160, maybe a wee bit more for this, but it is a 24-year-old bottle of single malt Scotch whisky, fully naturally presented to 46% ABV, and it tells us on the label that it's non-chill filtered and natural colour, exactly how we like it. AnCnoc has produced it. It's a brand from Knock Do Distillery up in Speyside. Some people say it's Highland, it's a Highland whisky. It's up to you whether you want to debate that or decide that it's a Highland whisky. They put Highland on the label, but so do Glenfarclas and Maclean, and they are most certainly in Speyside. So it's up to a distillery whether they want to be a Speysider or a Highland, and it's up to us to decide whether that's in the parish of Speyside or not. For me, it's a Speysider. However, regardless of whether you decide it's Speyside or Highland, it's still a lovely whisky. And at current prices, it still remains good value stuff. It can be quite complex, it can switch up a little. Sometimes it comes across quite sherry forward, other times you've got this lovely kind of mineralic spicy note through it to make it a wee bit more nutty and a wee bit more kind of kitchen spices and that kind of thing. But regardless of how you interpret it, Speyside, spicy, sherry forward, Highland, it's always a decent bottle of whiskey and it's always good value for money. This is an easy 8.5 out of 10 for me, and I've already replaced it. Let's jump over to Islay quickly. This is one of the guardians of Islay. I would say, along with Ardbeg 10, Port Charlotte 10-year-old today in 2024 has really coming into its own. It seems to be getting better and better all the time. Where some earlier Port Charlottes were a little bit hit and miss, some were a wee bit hot, some were a wee bit odd. Things have started to really settle down now. We've started to see some, perhaps from the sheer maturity of stocks that they have, whatever it is, just maybe a canny hand at putting the vattings together these days. Whatever's happening, it's good. It's approaching £60, and Bruichladdich in general, Port Charlotte and Bruichladdich brands, are both starting to get a wee bit pricey. They need to keep it in check. You know, they've done a good job of building a really strong following over the years, and it would be a shame if that following started to feel a wee bit alienated from the product just because it started to get a wee bit expensive. That said, this really heavily peated, smoky, lovely, delightful dram. A wintertime dram, sure, but in summertime like this, late at night, feet up, out next to the fire pit, something like that, it's just a treat. I have already replaced this wee Port Charlotte 10, and I'd be happy to continue doing that. It has become a wee bit of a perma-shelf item for me. Good stuff. 8 out of 10. Back in the premium end of things, you might struggle to get a hold of this right now. The last time that Arran tried to put an 18-year-old together like this one, they didn't really have much in the way of a deep enough stock to bring out an 18-year-old back in 2023. So what they did instead is they brought out for 1 year only a 17-year-old. And it was every bit as delicious as this, to be honest. My problem with it is, a wee bit like what I've mentioned about Bruichladdich and Port Charlotte, the prices are creeping up and up and up. The standard entry-level stuff, the Arran 10-year-old and things like that, still very affordable, but as soon as there's a decent age statement on there, 15, 17, 18 years and north, the prices start to get a bit out of whack. This 18-year-old now is probably going to come back onto the market far too expensive. If it's going to turn up at £150 or something, I'll probably check out. But the £100 I paid for this, in fact less, a wee bit less than £100 even if I'm honest, was very good value. Beautifully sherry rich, very sherry forward for an Arran 18. Delicious liquid, easy to recommend. It's all about price. Once you start to approach £150 and things like that, it struggles a bit. That said, the experience I had with this bottle, given the price I paid for it, makes it an 8 out of 10, and I would replace it in a heartbeat at the price I paid of less than £100. Let's do a wee Benromach trifecta. This is Benromach's 10-year-old. You can predict what I'm going to say about this. We have to say it. We're going to keep saying it until it happens. This is at 43% ABV, when all the other stuff that we're buying outside of Benromach's age-stated core range of this 10, the 15 and the 21, all at 43, everything else is at 46 and natural, non-chill filtered. And even when there's a non-age-stated product, you look a wee bit closer and there's a vintage there telling you the distillation year and the bottling year. It's exactly what we've been asking from Benromach. And I don't think it would take much for them to step up and give us that in the core range as well. However, they seem to stick to their guns and they're not really interested in doing that right now. Anyway, all that said, this remains a fantastic wee 10-year-old bottle of whiskey. I don't think any whiskey enthusiast would be disappointed about having this on their shelf. Unlike a lot of producers out there, Benromach are still being reasonable with the money that they're asking for their product until you get into that expensive stuff of the 21-year-old is now up at £150, £140, something like that. It's just the way it's going right now. But for the Benromach 10-year-old, this is still reasonably affordable. And not only is it good value, good sipping, delicious whiskey, it is pretty unique as well. The profile of Benromach is very distinctive and very enjoyable for a whiskey enthusiast to sip. Yes, I would like to see this a wee bit more natural, but it's still worthy of an 8 out of 10. And for a 10-year-old at 43%, that's pretty high praise. I've already replaced it. Okay. I'm doing that again. Okay. These are naturally presented Benromach's. Two different takes on their contrast series. Some really interesting products coming out from them. They had an interesting one last year where they had a kiln dried version versus an air dried version. That was quite interesting. I mean, okay, it's very, very geeky, right? But generally speaking, the contrast series, they've got a peated version and a sherry peated version. They've got a Cara Gold. They've got an organic version. They've got so much choice at 46% ABV with those vintage statements on there that it makes it a very, very interesting line of whiskies for whiskey enthusiasts like us. In my left hand here, I've got their Contrast Organic at 46% ABV. This is a 2014-2023 vintage. Loved this bottle of whiskey, made me realise just how much I had been ignoring Benromach's organic releases. I think it's one of the better ones in recent years. Really loved it, just from the neck pour. I really managed to tear through this very, very quickly, share it with a lot of other folk too. And the other one as well, I think it's maybe even arguably more compelling. This is a 2014-2023 distillate also, so exact same specs in terms of vintage and age as the organic. This is the sherry cask finish contrast peat smoke. And peat and sherry just works very, very well, doesn't it? This was a great bottle of whiskey. I would say that both of these, just because of how delicious and how dependable and how interesting these bottles of whiskey were, I think they deserve to be elevated a wee bit. These are 8.5 out of 10, both of them. And I would recommend Benromach Contrast Series to pretty much anyone who wants to go out and explore handmade, kind of handmade, mostly handmade, Speyside single malt whiskey. 8.5, 8.5 would easily replace both of these. Good stuff, Benromach. Keep it up, please. And thank you for keeping the prices fair as well. Right. The only rule I have about this is that it has to be whiskey. I've not added any American whiskey into this ever, but I'm sure there's going to be some Irish in here, maybe a little bit of English, and certainly lots and lots of Scotch whiskey. Scotch malt and grain. This is a blend. And that's us starting things off with a wee bit of Glasgow. I've had this particular bottle quite a wee while now. They don't call it Great King Street anymore. This is just Compass Box Glasgow Blend these days. This is back in the days when it was Great King Street. However, the bigger change to this is actually bottle size. This used to be a good wee blended whiskey if you could get it at a decent price to recommend to people, but it was always a bit of a pain that it came in a 50cl bottle. I'm glad to see that these days, for £40, you can pick it up in a 70cl bottle instead, and that makes it a wee bit better value. It's usually pretty good quality stuff goes into making up this blend. But I have to say that there was a time that this, the Artist blend and the Glasgow blend from Compass Box, they were really the kind of bastions for blended whisky. They were the real kind of enthusiast blends. And back in the days it might have been a Bailey Nickel Jarvie or something like that that we loved, but that's long gone now. And things like these stepped in to take that place. These are different days that we live in now. I'm going to give this Glasgow blend a 7 out of 10 and share with you another couple of blends that you might be even more interested in. These are both wee dumpy bottles from Turntable. It's a Glasgow blending company, just called Turntable Blending House. There's really not much left in this, but there is a wee drip of this. This was by far my favourite. Really good. This is the Purple Haze. This is track 3. This is the first of the 3 ever releases that we had from Turntable. This one shared all the makeup on the back of the label. Craigellachie Oloroso made up 42% of this. Balmenic Pedro Jimenez made up 44%. So we've got 2 worm tub distilleries right there, bringing a lot of weight and power and texture. And only 14% grain, Invergordon from an ex-sherry barrel. It was a wee bit expensive at £70, and then you sipped it and it was just so glorious that I went out to get another bottle only to discover that it was gone. Still, this was an absolute cracking whisky. I'd give this a 9 out of 10 and I would pick it up in a heartbeat again. Not in a hurry to spend much more than £70 for it, just let's not get carried away, but it was delicious, delicious whisky, and it showed just how much could be done blending good quality ingredients together. Now, on later releases, this one is actually one of their standard ranges that you can buy generally today. This is their peaty version called Smokin Riff. They didn't put the makeup on the back, but you can still head to their website and discover really quite easily what makes up each of these batches. And I hope that the transparency continues with these guys, because the whiskies that they're making are really quite good. It's going to be interesting to see how they get on in time, because the stocks of decent whiskies are either becoming harder to get a hold of or harder to get a hold of at decent prices. But for the core range, they managed to get the prices right down, and I'm seeing these at £50 and often quite a wee bit less than £50 now, and occasionally on special offer. And that makes it worthwhile, something to look out for, especially when you want to change the minds of those blend snobs. It's not about whether it's a blended whisky or a malt whisky. It's based on how good the ingredients are, how much they've been looked after, how well they've been matured, how well they've been put together. Turntable are showing that blended whiskies can be delicious too. It's great if you can try before you buy, but honestly, if you can get this at less than £50, there's not much risk in it, right? Really, really decent stuff. I'm going to give the Purple Haze a 9 out of 10 because I love it so much, and this Smokin Riff I'd give a 7.5 out of 10. Sometimes I've got to put my money where my mouth is, and when I talk about drinking and enjoying blends, here's another 2 Maclean's nose being thrown in the recycled review. This is 30 to 34, 35 pounds tops. Don't consider this and just another blend. Maclean's Nose is just a very good whisky. It's very outdoorsy. I always talk about how it's got that outdoorsy feel to it. There's a little bit of peat smoke in here. There's a little bit of weight. There's a lot of malt. It's a 70% malt, 30% grain blend. And they're doing that just to bring us something really, really super good value. A good drinking whisky, a whisky that's interesting, a whisky that you can take along to events and gift to people and never worry about the cost. And also you can make it a very easy thing to recommend to people when people are coming in looking for, oh, can you recommend a bottle of whisky? And suddenly you recommend them something that they discover it's £70 and they nearly have a heart attack. People still associate a good bottle of whisky in the £30 to £40 bracket. £40 is premium to a lot of people. We get carried away as enthusiasts, so it's wonderful to have this at a drinking price. I don't know how much I scored this in the last recycled review. I think it's already been in a recycled review, has it? Certainly these 2 bottles go in the bin this time around at 8 out of 10. I think it's always going to be on the shelf for as long as it's available. This is another good value drinker for as long as it lasts. This is Speyburn's 18-year-old. Now the 15-year-old used to be fantastic. We used to be able to pick it up for 40 £6 and things like that. Now it's a lot more expensive, £60–65 for the 15-year-old, and this, unfortunately for the 18, has moved up closer to the £80 mark, more or less, somewhere around that area, and it's probably going to continue to creep up. Such is the direction of 80-year-old malt whisky these days. However, this is still good quality stuff, even at £80. Where else are you going to get a fully natural, stated as such on the label? It says natural colour, non-chill filtered, 46%, 18-year-old age statement, and delicious from a worm tub distillery for about £80. The more people that discover this, the more I think the Inverhouse need to be reassured that they're on the right track. And I hope that that means that they'll continue to try and bring fantastic whiskies like this for drinkers to be enjoyed at this mature age and this reasonable price point. Just great, great stuff. This will make this the stuff of legend in the future, I'm sure of it. Today, it's a 9 out of 10 for me, and I would replace this. In fact, I'm surprised I haven't already. Let's have a wee look at this from Angus Dundee. This is a whisky that I really don't talk about very, very much, and certainly on the shelves in here there used to be the 16-year-old occasionally. It was a 40% 16-year-old whisky. It was always just a wee bit too soft. It is in fact the gentle dram, that's what they market themselves as. Angus Dundee put this out as kind of that gentle style of Scotch whisky. However, this is their 14-year-old, and for some reason, the 14-year-old they choose to put out here, non-chill filtered. It doesn't say natural colour on this label, it says high strength for some reason, but what they're actually talking about is 46% ABV. High strength compared to the other Tomintouls, of course. So that's them speaking to the people that are already buying Tomintoul. I'm going to suggest Tomintoul, why don't you try and get lots more people into your brand by putting more of your range out there at 46% and natural and letting us taste what the whisky is actually like rather than reducing it down to 40% like so many of your releases do. I understand that you've got your market that you're looking after now, but everything's just a wee bit watery and the kind of zeitgeist, I think, for good quality malt whiskies are not there. It's a wee shame. That said, there's more coming out from Tomintoul these days, more and more things happening all the time that's bringing a wee bit more of a natural variation into things. So maybe they're just putting a bit of a toe in the water to see where things can go. That said, this was a decent bottle, a really straight, honest, quite very, very typical Speyside whisky. Interestingly, it actually says Speyside Glenlossie on the label, which I think is a nice touch. And I would replace their 14-year-old. At a decent price, you can still pick this up, £50 and less, I believe. Been a while since I've checked. Based on the experience I had with it this time around, I would give this an 8 out of 10, and yes, on offer and in the mood, I would have another bottle of the 14-year-old Tomintoul back on the shelf. Okay, we have Lagavulin 12. This is not the last time I bought Lagavulin 12. For a recent VPub session, I bought a more recent, I think it was a 2022 Lagavulin 12 I bought, and I paid, I believe, far too much money for it. This I actually bought on the island of Islay in late 2020. This is the 2019 version, and it was sitting alongside the 2020 special release as well, and this was £90. And the one sitting next to it, the 2020 release, was £120, and they were just sitting on the shelf together. It was just a no-brainer for me. I took the cheaper one, of course. But it's got more and more expensive every time the special releases comes out. It's difficult to justify spending the money on Lagavulin 12 when there's so many really, really good, delicious, tasty alternatives coming alongside. That said, I really enjoyed my time with this bottle. Lagavulin 12 continues to be fantastic quality. It's just a shame that the pricing is a wee bit out of whack these days. We need to remember that they're asking us to pay for a 12-year-old malt whisky £155. It's just a bit too expensive. My experience with this was fantastic. I would give this an 8.5 out of 10, and it would be a 9, honestly speaking, if it was a wee bit more affordable. I bet you I missed that. Okay, here's another thing that I could potentially miss. This is a fantastic bottle of whiskey, and I came to this too late. I just discovered how great this was far too late. And now, for most markets, I believe that the Aultmore, the Foggie Moss, this is a 12-year-old at 46%, all fully natural. is being discontinued. Don't panic. Don't go out to auction, don't pay over the odds for it, don't get crazy. There's still lots of stock out there in the supply chain, there's lots of stock in retail, and there's even stock still available direct from dewars on the Aultmore website. So we can still pick this up at £55 for those of you who are interested. But it's the weight, it's the quality, it's the texture, it's the flavour. This was ex-bourbon forward, just a wonderful take on a nice, rich, full-bodied. Now, Aultmore does not have worm tubs, but to sip it you would think that they do. There's a lovely weight to it. The texture was gorgeous. I really tore through this really quite quickly. I have another bottle of the Aultmore 12 on the shelf there. I'll be keeping it sealed for a wee while to see what happens. I'm not going to panic, I'm not going to pay over the odds, and neither should you. That said, this is an 8.5 all day long, and it's just a fantastic Speyside single malt whisky. Love it. Here's a difficult one to talk about. This is Wild Turkey 101. I don't think I'll ever be able to have a dram of Wild Turkey 101 without thinking about a gentleman that we lost recently. One of Whisky Tube's own, Al, Whisky Straight Al. We lost him recently, and one of his favourites was Wild Turkey 101. One of the whiskies that accelerated his love of what whisky could be was the 50.5%, 101 proof Wild Turkey. And we can understand why. Sometimes we can pick this up for £25, sometimes even less, for 50.5% good quality, easy sipping, delicious Kentucky straight bourbon whiskey. I think because of its flexibility too, the fact that you can make a lovely mixed drink with it, you can use it as a base in cocktails, I think it's always going to be on the shelf. But I think it's always going to be on the shelf from here on in because of its value, because of how good quality it is, but because it's always good to remember the folk that we've enjoyed our whiskies with in the past. And I certainly enjoyed my time with Al. Cheers, big guy. You'll be missed, and I'd give your whiskey an easy 8 out of 10. Okay, before we get to our last bottle, what I'm going to do is remind everyone that every week I go out on a Thursday night, 10:15 usually, and I host a virtual whiskey pub called the V-Pub. It goes on for quite a wee while, but it's not intended to be typical YouTube content. It's intended for us to relax a wee bit and think about whiskey, enjoy whiskey as part of a much bigger thing, as part of a community. Hanging out with the people that join live, and of course being able to follow along with the chat even when we pick it up on the replay. It would be wonderful to welcome you there on a Thursday night. This week, however, I am at Campbelltown for the Malts Festival, so there is no V-Pub. Hopefully, if this recycled review goes together well, I'll be releasing this instead of the V-Pub. But even better than that, at the regular V-Pub time slot, Jeff from Jeff Whisky is going to be putting out a pop-up Jeff Pub instead in the regular V-Pub time slot, and he's going to make the theme about Campbelltown. I'm hoping that I'm able to drop in, either to participate in the chat for a wee while, or maybe even, if I've got some internet connection, drop in live from Campbelltown. So that could be fun. Coming out just after this recycled review tonight. Hope to see you there. Anyway, that means I have to finish on a Campbelltown whisky. And this is really one of the best of the affordable and relatively available Campbelltown whiskies that we've had in recent years. This is Kilkerran's 16-year-old. The 2023 release was fantastic. Really, it was much richer than the previous releases. The first couple of releases had been a wee bit lighter, a wee bit more kind of bourbon cask forward, where there was a bit more richness, a bit more depth and things to the 2023 release, and I think it was all the better for it. We're getting to see just how flexible, just how really fantastic and how adaptable that Kilkerran malt whisky is. Doesn't seem to matter what cask it comes out of, it's always fantastic. It's just like so many things that's coming out of the wee tune right now, it's wonderful. But it can be difficult to get a hold of, especially when it's as priced as great value as this, £65 for 16-year-old all-natural Campbelltown malt whisky. It was widespread enough for most of us to get our hands on it. This is a cracking bottle of whisky. Any of the Kilkerran 16s are 9 out of 10 whiskies. This one in 2023 is absolutely a 9 out of 10, and I'm excited to get down to Campbelltown this week and enjoy the Malts Festival. Terrific stuff. As we start our Infinity Demijohn all over again, it's time to roll our barrel into a quiet, dark spot. and see how we got on. I'll keep you up to date either on the VPub or in future recycled reviews. But until then, thank you and Slanchova. Oh dear.